Hi everyone, welcome to my summary for June 2023. June is not going to see quite the same levels of intensity, aggression, hostility that we had in May. As you may know, we had a nasty Pluto, Mars, Jupiter T-square going on in the last couple of weeks of May. I suspected an escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war. I didn't predict a happy ending financially, and indeed we did see Russia go on to take Bakhmut, a ratcheting up of attacks. We had a 7.7 earthquake recorded off New Caledonia, and at today's date, 31st of May, there's been a significant fall in the FTSE 100 index in the last few days of May. So what does June hold for us? There are a couple of things that I'd like to pay a bit of attention to. These are Uranus, Mars, and I'd also like to cover Venus in a bit more detail because she will soon be going retrograde. To start with, let's have a look at the main ingresses and aspects formed as the month unfolds. On the 4th, Mercury conjuncts Uranus in Taurus. We could hear more about advances in artificial intelligence at this time. There could be a focus on young people or education. As Uranus is in Taurus, and can be shocking and disruptive too, we could also receive unexpected news or information concerning the economy. Venus enters Leo on the 5th of the month. Mars is already in Leo, and throughout this month it will look like Venus is trying to catch up with Mars but doesn't quite make it. More on that later. On the 11th, Mercury enters into Gemini just as Pluto retrogrades back into Capricorn. Pluto will stay in Capricorn until January 2024. Mercury is very much at home in Gemini. We may even see communication, news, media coverage, data coming out in a purer form because Mercury is in a sign it rules. In fact, keeping with this theme of economy, Venus moves into Leo the very next day. This would be the 5th. And as she does so, she immediately opposes Pluto. This in itself is not a good financial aspect, so investors look out. But Venus-Pluto has other significances too. So we're looking at issues of addiction, greed, power, manipulation, all behaviours to be on guard against. On the 10th, we have another Mercury-Uranus aspect going on. This is a parallel in the declinations, and again that theme of news, young people, education is emphasised. On the 11th, Venus in Leo squares Jupiter in Taurus. I think a key manifestation here is excess. Venus in Leo is glamorous, showy, needs attention, and that square to Jupiter speaks of excess. On the same day, Mercury in Gemini trines Pluto. This is very probing and deep dive. It's an excellent aspect for getting to the truth of the matter. On the 15th, Mars, planet of action, execution, aggression, hostility, parallels Uranus in the declinations. On the same day, Venus parallels Mercury in the declinations, and this could put an emphasis on things like artistry or the performing arts. In itself, it isn't a troublesome aspect. On the 18th, Saturn turns retrograde in Pisces, and the very next day is an exact sextile aspect with Jupiter. This is a very stable and steady kind of aspect, denoting sensible boundaries, sticking to commitments, sustained steady growth. On the 21st, we have another aspect between Mercury and Pluto. This time it's in the declinations where they are contraparallel. This has the feel of powerful scrutiny but under pressure. There could be incisive, investigative, information gathering, but the facts won't come out without a good deal of mental stress. The Sun enters Cancer on the 21st. On the 25th, we'll see what could potentially be the most unsettling day in June. This is because Mars will exactly square Uranus, and at the same time, Mercury will square Neptune. So we could look to confusion on this day. The facts that emerge may not be the truth. There's a potential for increased aggression and hostility or for large accidents. This is certainly a day to be careful if this aspect affects your personal points. There's something important to note about Venus and Mars in June. Mars is in Leo throughout the month. Venus enters Leo on the 5th of June. She appears to be chasing Mars and trying to catch up, but never quite manages it. In fact, Venus is going to start a retrograde cycle in July. On the 23rd of July, she'll be stationing and appearing to move backwards in the heavens. And in that retrograde motion, she is going to be retracing her steps across some of the degrees that are covered in June. So by the 4th of September, Venus will have gone all the way back to around 12 degrees of Leo. So from around the 18th or 19th of June, keep an eye open for any key themes which emerge in your relationships. It may well be that these are expounded on and resolved during Venus's retrograde cycle. Venus will be covering these exact degrees of Leo again, but not until the second half of September. Something else very interesting about the Mars and Venus dynamic in June is that Venus appears to be chasing Mars and getting closer and closer as we near the month's end. She doesn't exactly make it in the longitudes. Venus-Mars is a very passionate, sizzling combination, can often speak of new unions, but this union never quite happens in the longitudes. They remain out of orbit by just over 3 degrees in June, and in July the gap widens as Venus appears to slow. And then, of course, Venus retrogrades on the 23rd. However, what's interesting about this is that Venus and Mars do draw into a parallel in early July. Better still, this red-hot coupling is joined by Jupiter as well. This all plays out in the first week of July. I wonder if for some people this could speak of an intense relationship becoming possible, one with a good deal of happiness and growth, but for some reason it cannot complete on all levels until Mars and Venus are conjunct in the longitudes too. And that long-awaited conjunction won't happen until the 22nd of February next year. Another interesting thing about this Venus retrograde cycle is that Venus behaved similarly back in 2007 and again in 2015. So for those of you who can identify with a distinct relationship theme during these years, this could be a year when the matter is brought up again, perhaps something from the past needs resolving. June's full moon takes place on the 4th of June. Noteworthy aspects are an out-of-sign Venus-Pluto opposition, a Mercury-Uranus conjunction, a Jupiter-North Node conjunction in Taurus, and a Venus trine to Neptune. Full moons are a time of completion and closure, and this one has themes of emotional insatiability, addiction, dreaminess, surprising news, cooperation. In Mark Edmund Jones' book of the Sabian symbols, this particular degree of Sagittarius is summarised as being the pyramids and the Sphinx. The key word is certification. Positive manifestation would be effective practicality through a gift for bringing real imagination to everyday living. A negative manifestation would be the ridiculous efforts to fill the shoes of giants. There's a noteworthy new moon taking place on the 18th of June at around 27 degrees Gemini, and this has a close square to Neptune, although we could be looking at themes of inspiration, visions, spiritual yearning. There could equally be disorientation, confusion or disillusionment. The Sabian symbol for this particular degree is summarised as a gypsy coming out of the forest. The key word is expenditure, and when positive, it's self-release through a joy in the accomplishments of the moment. When negative, it's a complete disinclination to enter into the ordinary relationships of society. The worst aspect of June really is that Mars-Uranus square and parallel. This is quite an incendiary mixing of energies. If we look at Putin's chart, you can see it closely straddling his sensitive points. And if we look at Zelensky's chart, we can see that Uranus falls in his 12th house and Mars conjuncts his IC. Zelensky is actually undergoing a Pluto-Mars opposition transit anyway, but we can also see that the Mercury-Uranus conjunction of the 4th of June falls into Zelensky's 12th house and closely squares his MC-IC axes. This could actually mean that there is some unpleasant or shocking news coming to light for him early in June. I think we need to be mindful of the potential for more hostility, explosive action even, from this quarter in June.